Dead by Daylight has recently gone through a massive overhaul, buffing solo queue players and giving them features that bring them close to the same level as groups of players that coordinate through voice chat. This change has been a hot topic in the DBD community, with some celebrating the update and others worrying that it will ruin the game for killers. After seeing the changes and comparing it to what already exists in Identity V, it's clear that the update is not nearly as overpowered as some might suggest. With these new features, solo queue players can now experience the game in the way that was previously reserved for only those in a team. How could IDV benefit from these changes? First, let's talk about these massive changes. Dead by Daylight added new icons to the game's HUD, or I guess you could call it UI, to let players know when one of their in-match teammates is doing something. This is a game-changing upgrade, as prior to this there was little way of knowing what your teammates were up to without physically going up and finding them. In Identity V, we've already had access to this sort of information for years, possibly since the game was even released, in the form of quick messages, and most recently the auto-suggest quick messages that were added around a year ago, I believe. In Identity V, you can ping your Cypher Machine progress, your healing progress when healing a teammate, you can ping when the hunter is nearby, when the hunter has changed target, and much more. Despite that though, the text options are limited and, well, don't really make sense on their own sometimes. In what situation did they expect you to say, "I'm stuck"? This is used now to say that you have some connection issues, but that can't have been the inspiration behind the message. If not, you could have just said something along that line anyway. The community, of course, has created a sort of lingo for the quick messages to help get around some of the limitations and the weird text options that we have. Most notably, the character Sia might use "Don't rescue me" at the start of a match to indicate that the hunter has a strong camping ability. Typically, this signifies a guard 26 is in the match. Why then do I bring it up if Identity V already has this feature? I was mostly just wondering whether Dead by Daylight's implementation of the information for solo queue players update is superior to IDV or not, and whether or not IDV would benefit from taking some of these ideas and incorporating them into the game. I want to be very clear here that I don't really think that the survivor side currently needs a buff, and these sorts of additions to the game would probably slightly push Cypher Rush even further than it already is. However, it would give solo queue survivors, especially those that are in rank for example, a big leg up and would lead to less players giving up on solo ranking altogether. The first feature added to DBD with its most recent patch was the addition of the decoding icon next to a survivor that was working on a Cypher Machine, or in Dead by Daylight it's called a generator. Soon they plan on adding a progress bar as well to that icon to give every player in the match more information on how far along each person's Cypher Machine is. In Identity V, we already have this in the form of pinging your progress, but I think removing this quick message and adding some sort of icon would do great in Identity V. This wouldn't be a massive buff for survivors, but would also add to the cohesiveness of the team as they know exactly when someone is or is not decoding, and of course how far along they are. This would for example help a kiter know easier how much longer they need to kite, as sometimes you miss people's pings as you're trying to dodge abilities or use your own abilities. Because of course you would always be able to see the progress and check whenever you have a spare second in that kite. Another icon added to Dead by Daylight was the progress bar of a survivor healing on the ground. Yes, this is something we once again have in Identity V in the form of quick messages, but as Identity V is heavily centered around team plays such as balloon rescues, stuns, heals, harassing hunters and stuff like this would give any assist player even more information and constant information that they could check whenever they want to. Once again, this wouldn't be a crazy buff to the survivors, but would still lead to more optimal plays from the survivor side. One of the most useful features added to Dead by Daylight was the inclusion of the being chased icon that shows exactly when they are being chased by the killer, obviously. Now, in Identity V, is this necessary? I'm not completely sure, as one would deduce that if one of 3 survivors is not decoding, that they are probably being chased by the hunter. But maybe they could add an improved quick message that's called "I'm being chased" instead of "the hunter is nearby," that would serve the same purpose but would be a little less murky in the meaning, as the hunter is nearby doesn't actually mean that they are chasing you, and since there is a cooldown between the messages, if that hunter changes targets, you can't often warn people in time. I'm still not sure if this would be a good addition to the game or not. What do you think? Tell me down in the comments below. One of the most underrated features that Dead by Daylight has officially added to the game is the improved wiggle system. Hear me out, okay? Yeah, it does sound a bit strange strange, but wiggling in Identity V usually consists of you repetitively spamming the left and right buttons. This, first of all, looks sort of stupid, and second, have you ever tried being on a call with someone when they're trying to do the balloon struggle? It sounds like they're being trampled by a herd of elephants. It is also very difficult to know how much of an impact your struggling is actually having. Like, what is the maximum speed that you need to be tapping these buttons at? I have no clue. DBD added a new calibration type struggle system where players have to press the struggle button when the line hits the calibration mark, similar to a cipher machine. The more you hit in a row, the stronger the resistance for the hunter holding you. If they added this to IDV, this would of course award players for hitting calibrations more consistently, as it would annoy hunters holding them, and would also give the survivors more satisfaction or a little bit more understanding whether or not they could have struggled better or not. And of course, your friends won't have to worry about that herd of elephants. Did I even mention that PC players would heavily benefit from this? Oh, and natties, since we're on the topic, Dead by Daylight optimized the PC controls a little bit more with their patch. Would you mind completely reworking the PC controls, please? So many players have just given up on the game after their phone couldn't handle the game anymore, and they tried it on PC and realized that you have to press F1, F2, F3, and even Alt+4? Like, what? The next addition that both Dead by Daylight and Video Horror Society, another asymmetrical game, added to their game was that they helped fix queue times. That is something Identity V is heavily in need of, at least in the NAU server. What they added was a dynamic bounty or dynamic reward system. This system analyzes the number of players queued up in both the hunter and the survivor role, along with their tier and other pieces of data. And then it adds small reward prizes to players that join to the role that needs more players. Let's just say most people are playing survivors and queues are super long for them. So the system would, for example, reward 5 to 10 clues or something like that per match to any player that goes and picks the opposite side, the hunter side, until eventually those queue times are equaled out, and of course they don't have to give any more rewards. And if it was the other way around, they'd be able to give 5 to 10 clues to any survivors that sign up to play matches. The bigger the gap in queue times and players, the bigger the reward would be, and this would of course incentivize more players to play the other role and would lead to a healthier game as a whole. Have you ever thought about how the game looks a little bit cluttered and pretty much just old? Well, check out this video here to see my basic ideas for some changes that Identity V could make to the game, be able to make the UI a little bit better.